Hi everyone, welcome to another of our application videos. I'm joined by Christine as always and Toby, who is bringing us this message from Philippians, talking about working out our salvation with fear and trembling and the verses around that. And so we've got some questions. Maybe we'll start the ball rolling, looking at those questions and hope this serves you for your discussion, whether that's in small group with your friends and just thinking about over the dinner table this week, perhaps. Let's start with that very idea of working out our salvation with fear and trembling. I love the sort of language that you use to describe that in terms of grappling with the gospel. You know, salvation is something huge for us and everything that God's done, and it's appropriating that for us in our circumstances, untangling it, pressing it in, deciphering how does this work out. And I wonder, even just for us as well, and maybe for people in their groups, thinking, what does that look like for you, for us right now? Maybe Christine, you want to start. What can that look like in practice to actually bring the gospel into our situation?
Well, I think when we're working out our salvation, we're working out what's happened on the inside, and faith has come to us. That's one thing that's happened. So when there are opportunities to express faith, to actually do that, and I know for me that every time a gift day comes round, there's a moment, isn't there, where you have to decide, am I going to live by faith here? Am I going to give in faith? Or am I just going to make a pragmatic decision? So sometimes it's things like that.
Yeah.
Other times it might be, well, before I was saved, I was really caught up in a particular sin or something. And I think that working out your salvation, part of that is just learning to say no.
Yeah. So anything spring to mind for you?
Yeah, well, yeah. So I think it looks. I listed some like a variety of different ways it might look, I guess, and it can look different. Just one that comes to mind immediately is for me personally, there was a situation of some stress 3 months ago. I was starting a new business, and it was really stressful, and it looked like it wasn't going to happen at several points, and I was anxious, to be honest with you. And the way I worked out my salvation there, and I said this once or twice before, but I go for a prayer walk and just bring it to Jesus and say, here it is. You see it, I see it. I give it to you. Help me with it. And every single time, every day, I do that on a day because it's a daily thing. Every single time I come back and I just feel comforted and have a fresh sense of faith and perspective. Actually, it's not all that bad and things of that nature. So sometimes it is that wrestling, that grappling, that bringing it to the Lord, and he will help you because he's your Lord, and God is a father to you.
That's brilliant. And I love what you said in the message as well about this is not working for our salvation, but it is working out our salvation. There is an active participation and involvement. And I had another question there, maybe just for you and your groups to think about what Toby has said there about giving an illustration of the bridge. And if we're on a bridge and maybe we're doubting our salvation, which is we're so anxious or worried or in fear that we're not moving forward. And maybe that is a picture that resonated with different ones of you. What would that be for you? Are you, Toby's been encouraging. There's more that God has for us. There's more in our journey of faith. And it's always one that's moving forward in the mountain peaks and the valleys. We're moving forward with Jesus. Maybe you're in a season right now where you think, actually, I'm not moving forward, and there is fear or there's doubt or there is a practical obstacle. Did that resonate for you? What does that look like for you? One of the things specifically mentioned in the text and that you unpacked was the theme of grumbling as well. And I know when you were saying that, me listening to it, my selfish heart was saying, but I'm justified in grumbling. If you knew what was going on in my life, you would grumble too. And that can be the reaction for us. But yeah, how do we deal with that? If I'm justified in grumbling because my life is bad, what would you say to that?
Well, I'll jump in just quickly. So lamenting is like the godly grumbling. They're very similar, actually.
Yeah.
Like they're both you absolutely don't hold back with lamenting.
Yeah.
I mean, we see patterns. In fact, it may even be appropriate if you're in that situation. It's just bad and dire to go and read one of the Psalms of Lament and read it out loud to God, because the scriptures that lament help us put words to our emotion. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm experiencing, and as you're doing it, God can comfort you. And even if you don't use one of the kind of say textbook kind of laments, if you like, pouring out your heart to God, it really He comforts you. As I said, it's kind of like you're beating on His chest, and He's holding you as you're doing it. So it's not that we mustn't have strong emotion or just pretend like everything's okay. It is about knowing how to channel that. And even when you look at the Bible, in all but, I believe, one of the Psalms, there's always a kind of perspective in the Psalm where it says, but the Lord reigns on high, and or the Lord is good. And so it gives an opportunity to acknowledge God's goodness and sovereignty in the situation. But there is one Psalm that I've spoken of before that has none. It's literally lament from start to finish, and there's no light in there. The Bible, and that's helpful, because sometimes, okay, I've given it to God, and I can't. I am human. I'm the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And you've given it to the Lord. Even that's okay with God, because you're giving it to Him.
It's really helpful to express our emotions rather than
Yes.
bottle them up, isn't it? So it's a healthy thing to do if we're pouring out that emotion to God.
And it can feel, as a Christian, in terms of spiritual, that to be anything that's negative is almost like not allowed.
Yeah.
You know, negativity is non-spiritual, that sort of thing. But actually, life is negative sometimes. And, you know, being honest about that.
Yes.
But it's also a perspective of faith, and it's a perspective thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
About when we're in that place, not just focusing on the bad, but seeing the good and thanksgiving. Can I say some more on that?
I think that Thanksgiving is a great antidote. It's not that we thank God for the awful stuff that's going on, but we remember who He is, just like you were saying just there, Toby, that we give thanks to God for everything He's already done for us and all that we have already, and that helps us to gain perspective on what's actually going on for us, because that is so great, isn't it? That often that reduces the scale of our grumbling, our the things that we grumble about, because we realise actually I've been given so much.
Yeah,
and I think there is a cultural aspect to this. I think the culture in the United Kingdom, for the most part, I think if you were to ask someone that you work with, you know, how are you? They'll be like, I'm okay, I'm fine. It's this kind of present everything's okay, and because we don't know what to do with, no, do you know what, I'm going through a divorce, or you know, it's just we don't know what to do with it. And I think that can creep into the church and think, that this is the way to be, just no, everything's all right. And even if you know that you're allowed, we just like to project this version of ourselves, which is good, and we might even do that to God, not be real. I think there are other cultures in the world where you ask a person how they're doing, they will weep on your shoulder or just splurge out, and someone from this culture might think, oh gosh, what are you doing? Pull yourself together.
Put it back in.
So I think there's a cultural aspect that we need to learn, because we're weaker for it, and it's part of our inheritance to be able to lament well.
Yeah, I think that aspect of community is really important as well, both for that, but also for that perspective thing as well. Because I think when we are facing circumstances, what can happen happens in my life. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger in your head. And actually even just the fact of talking it through with someone, this is what is difficult right now. Yeah. This is what I'm finding challenging. Even just doing that in a conversation with someone can actually help you to see that it actually gets in its right perspective, and then coming alongside that with the right perspective of who God is and what He's done for you and His
Yes.
provision in the past and His promises for the future and that sort of thing, that can come in. Sometimes there's no room for that
Yeah.
because whatever we're grumbling about or concerned about is so big in our heads, even just being in community, which you are because you're in group, which is brilliant. But that's why we do these things, isn't it?
Yeah. I think also that grumbling often is in the context of something relational that's gone wrong. And again, it's just important to talk it out with whoever is involved rather than internal grumbling, or what people tend to do as well is grumble about someone to someone else. And then we're getting into another whole area of gossip then. And there's something, I don't know, I was going to say juicy and enjoyable sometimes, that we get stuck into that groove of doing that rather than working out our salvation by loving one another, confronting one another and all that kind of thing.
Amen. Brilliant. I hope that's been helpful to get the discussion going in your groups. Have a great discussion and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.